What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL rankings video. And in this video, I am going to rank every defense in the NFL going into the 2019 NFL season from last all the way to first, 32 to number 1. Before I give you my rankings, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion. Do you agree with my rankings? Do you agree with where I placed your team on this list? Or do you have beef with my rankings? Do you hate my rankings? Am I an idiot? Let me know in the comment section below. The worst defense going into the 2019 NFL season, in my personal opinion, is the New York Giants. The G-Men as a defense, I think, lack identity. And I also think they just lack superstars in general. This is a defensive depth chart that does not have any studs. That might be the only depth chart in the entire NFL that doesn't have at least one superstar caliber defender. You look at this depth chart from the defensive line to the linebackers to the secondary, and there's nothing that really stands out. Now, I do think that the draft picks that they acquired this offseason with Dexter Lawrence at nose tackle, DeAndre Baker at corner, Julian Love at corner. I do like some of these younger players, but this defense going into this season, including guys that were drafted last season, like Lorenzo Carter, very young defense. Janoris Jenkins is a player that's kind of fallen off from being a superstar a couple of seasons ago. Their safety position is not as good as it was with Landon Collins. The linebacker position in general is a mess, and the defensive line is nothing special. So when looking at the Giants, I just don't think they have any playmakers on their defense. And one or two playmakers on a defense can take a really bad defense to an average defense. I don't have much faith in this Giants defense getting it done week in, week out in the 2019 NFL season. The second worst defense going into the 2019 NFL season is the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins defense, I do think, separates itself from the Giants when it comes to scheme. Of course, they will have Brian Flores as the defensive coach this season. The Dolphins' defense in general last year was pretty bad, mostly defending the run. I think this season, adding Christian Wilkins and also adding a defensive coach like Brian Flores will fix some of those issues. But when you look at the Dolphins in terms of a defensive line and being able to get a pass rush, that's going to be a huge difficulty for this defense. They have nobody that really strikes you as a premier edge rusher, a premier interior rusher in the league, and they are going to struggle to get after quarterbacks, which is then going to hurt their secondary, which I do believe their secondary is the most talented part of this defense. You look at Xavier Howard, who's one of the best corners in the NFL. Their safeties aren't bad. Minkah Fitzpatrick should develop in his second season. Rashad Jones is a solid veteran, and TJ McDonald isn't bad either. But really, this defense just needs a lot of work up front, and I think that's really where they're going to be torched. Brian Flores has a lot of work to do. I think his scheme takes a little time to learn, and I do believe that the Dolphins are kind of looking to improve this defense in the second season of Brian Flores and just looking to lay the foundation in the first season. At number 30, I have the Oakland Raiders defense, a defense that, yes, they're here at number 30, but I do believe that they are going to take positive strides in 2019. I do think this is a defense to really pay attention to. They're very intriguing to me, and I'm rooting for them to develop because this is a defense that has a lot of young players that I really like for the most part, and I think this is a defense that has some potential to surprise some people this season. Now, the reason why I did rank them at number 30 is because there's a lot of question marks on whether these players can get it done and whether they can fit as a one cohesive unit. I do think one of the bright spots of a defense that was terrible last year was Arden Key in his rookie season. You then add Clelin Ferrell in the top of the draft, last season, and I do believe that Ferrell is going to be their best pass rusher right away because he was drafted to do so. He was drafted to bring in a little bit of pass rush, but also a little bit of leadership as well. And that is the interesting thing about these draft picks, was it was not only for talent, but it was also for culture. That is also the case with Jonathan Abram, who I think is going to be really solid in the NFL pretty much right away alongside LaMarcus Joyner. And when I look at this safety position, that's the most promising position the Raiders have on their roster defensively, with LaMarcus Joyner, who's going to contribute in coverage a lot as both a little bit of a slot corner, but also a safety, Jonathan Abram, and then Carl Joseph, who this player was also drafted very highly as an in-box safety, and maybe he could contribute as a linebacker on third down. Brandon Marshall and Vontaze Burfict are not what they used to be, but they're solid veteran presence in terms of linebacker play. And then you look at Garyon Connolly, who still has a lot to prove, but has a lot of potential. I think this defense has a good balance of youth and veterans, and I do believe that they could surprise a lot of people, but I just haven't seen it yet, so I can't put them any higher than number 30. At number 29, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, a defense that said goodbye to their leader of many seasons in McCoy and said hello to the man who was drafted one spot above him in the very same draft, Ndamukong Suh. Outside of that, they also drafted a future stud, a future star, and the future leader of this defense, Devin White, at the linebacker position. Devin White will form one of the best linebacker tandems in the NFL alongside Levante David, who's been doing it for years. I also love the addition of Shaquille Barrett from the Broncos, a player that's kind of a jack of all trades and can do a bunch of different things very well. I really hated the Mike Smith defense for a very long time in Tampa Bay. When you add a Todd Bowles, a coach that was a head coach due to the fact that he was so good defensively, then you bring him in alongside Bruce Arians, I believe this is just going to improve this defense from that fact alone. Now, where I really don't like this defense is in the secondary. The secondary is still truly really bad, and I would say it's the worst secondary in the NFL. That really hinders my ability to rank them any higher. The safety combination of Justin Evans and Kentrell Bryce is a very weak one. Corner play from Carlton Davis, Vernon Hargraves, who I think has been one of the worst starting corners in the NFL for a couple of seasons. Maybe Carlton Davis can improve, but just looking at this secondary in general, a lot of unproven players, a lot of young players that I don't know are very talented. The front seven is pretty good, but they don't really have that pure pass rusher because JPP has gone down with injury. Ndamukong Suh's going to have to play a lot better than he did during the regular season for the Rams. You're going to need to see postseason Rams Suh for them to have a really good unit. There are things that I like about this defense. I do like the coaching, but at the end of the day, this secondary is just truly awful, and I can't put them any higher because of it. At number 28, I have the Cincinnati Bengals defense, a defense that I really like players on the defense. Individual player-wise, the Bengals aren't bad, but when you look at certain aspects of this defense, particularly the linebacking core, I'm not a true fan of. Now, they have some players like Geno Atkins. They have Carl Lawson. They have as well Carlos Dunlap on the defensive line. Three players that I really like on the D-line. Linebacking-wise is their true weakness. Really, Preston Brown's the only proven commodity, and he's only really proven to be average throughout his career. Jordan Evans, Malik Jefferson, Nick Vigil. I don't really know about these guys in terms of starting NFL talent. One of these guys needs to step up for this unit to improve. When looking at the secondary, Drake Kirkpatrick is kind of hit and miss. Sometimes he can play very well. Other times he's horrible. William Jackson was a huge disappointment last season, but I believe he has the talent to be an elite corner in the NFL, and I'll stick by that. The safety position is sort of underrated with Sean Williams and Jesse Bates, but I just don't know about the Bengals defense. They were very banged up last season, and even when they weren't, they gave up a ton of yards, a ton of points. They're still one of the worst in the NFL, but it's kind of interesting because they do have some really good players. At number 27, I have the Kansas City Chiefs defense, a defense that was the true anchor of the Chiefs team in 2018. They bring in Steve Spagnuolo to change their defensive scheme. You're going to see more base 4-3 fronts from this defense. They go out, they trade for Frank Clark of the Seahawks, one of the best edge rushers in the league, an absolutely complete defensive lineman that I think will help this team a ton. Chris Jones is one of the best interior defenders in the entire NFL. That combination is going to be dangerous. Alex Okafor was a nice veteran addition, and Breeland Speaks, I think, will improve this season. Linebacking-wise, they're still extremely slow and lack a lot of coverage ability. I think that's the true weakness of this defense. Reggie Ragland, Anthony Hitchens, their inability to cover in space is a huge weakness against teams with good running backs, good tight ends, good slot receivers. They could be taken advantage of a ton. And not only do you have weak cover linebackers, but you have very weak corner play. Now, Kendall Fuller is hit and miss. He can be very good. He can also be taken advantage of against certain matchups. He's not one of the best corners in the NFL, but he's not one of the worst. But the rest of the corners on this team, I am scratching my head as to why they didn't upgrade this position. I mean, Bashaud Breeland, I don't even think he played last season. Ward, I don't know about him. Yes, they improved their safety position with Tyrann Mathieu and then also adding in the draft Thornhill. And Tyrann Mathieu's going to have to be something else for the secondary to really be good this season. And if he's not, I think we're still looking at the Chiefs defense as a bottom 5 unit in the league. Now, don't get me wrong. Last year, they could cause turnovers. They could create plays. They were pretty good in the red zone. And they're going to need to be that to complement their offense again in 2019. And I think they can do that because of the pass rushers they have on their team. But when it comes to playing elite offenses and when it comes to playing good quarterbacks, this defense is going to get shredded. At number 26, I have the Arizona Cardinals defense, a defense that I think vastly improved this offseason. Not a lot of people are paying attention to the improvement that they've made from a roster perspective. Whether that was adding Jordan Hicks from Philadelphia at middle linebacker, one of the better cover linebackers in the NFL, to go alongside the young player Hassan Reddick. I believe these two will create a combination of speed that will vastly improve their entire second level of their defense. Terrell Suggs will add some veteran presence as well as pass rush presence on third down to help out Chandler Jones, who's one of the best pure pass rushers in the NFL. Then you look at the secondary where they added DJ Swearinger from the waivers because something weird happened with the Redskins. He's a good safety and he's going to improve and have a very good tandem with Budda Baker, somebody that was slept on last season as a young player who's going to be one of the better safeties in the NFL, I think, very soon. Patrick Peterson is suspended, but once he comes back, you have a number 1 corner there, one of the better ones in the league. Robert Alford, I think, will improve the slot corner position. And then adding Byron Murphy, even though I'm not the biggest fan of him coming out of the draft, I still think he's going to be a starting caliber corner that is better than what they had last year. So overall, I think the Cardinals defense is one that is being slept on. I think it's going to be a little bit better than last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually have some games where they play very, very well and Chandler Jones goes off and they're making plays all over the field. And I'm very intrigued to see how Patrick Peterson impacts this defense once he comes back. At number 25, the Atlanta Falcons defense is a defense that was absolutely hit by injuries last year, and they just couldn't survive it. Now, that's why they're so difficult to rank when it comes to going into the 2019 season. I just don't know what we're going to get from this defense because I do see a lot of holes. Like, I still think they're not going to be as good as they were in 2017. I don't think they have the same caliber talent in terms of defensive line depth. And I don't think they have the depth in the secondary that they used to have. But then at the same time, they still have some studs. They have a stud at every level, especially down the middle of their defense when you look at their defensive tackle in Grady Jarrett, middle linebacker Deion Jones, and their safety play with Keanu Neal, as well as 3 studs at every level of their defense. It really depends on a couple of players to make or break their defense in 2019. I think Takk McKinley is one to really pay attention to. If he can take the next step, this defense could all of a sudden be a top 15 unit, as well as the fact that Vic Beasley can find some sort of form that he used to have in 2016 in terms of gathering sacks and pressures. This defense can be a lot better. I just seriously question that pass rush, edge rush from the Atlanta Falcons, as well as their interior defensive line depth behind Grady Jarrett. They have some elite playmakers, which causes them to be not one of the worst defenses, but I also have a ton of questions because of how many injuries they had in 2018. At number 24, I have the Washington Redskins defense. I think Redskins fans are not going to be very happy with me when it comes to this ranking. But hey, I'll take the criticism in the comment section below. I think they have good run stuffers when it comes to their interior defensive line of Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. They have a pretty good pass rusher in Ryan Kerrigan, promising young player in Montez Sweat, and they have an overpaid but good safety, Landon Collins. Now, when you get rid of those players, who I like that aspect of their defense, their middle linebacking play is going to take a significant jump backwards this season. I do think Zach Brown is a little bit of an understated loss from Redskins fans' perspective. Then you look at the safety position outside of Landon Collins, and I'm not a huge fan. The corner position I've never been a fan of for the past 4 to 5 years. I think Josh Norman is overrated. I don't really think they have anybody else at that position who provides as a solid man-to-man presence. So overall, the Redskins defense could prove me wrong and be a little bit better than 24. But even if I'm wrong, I can't see them being a top 10 defense by any means. At number 23, I have the Cleveland Browns defense. A defense that I do believe is being overrated when we go into the 2019 NFL season. I do think the Browns are going to be a good team this year, but I don't think it's going to be because of their defense. I think a lot of people are overstating some of the players, really some of the talent that they have on this defense. A lot of people are saying the Browns are the overall most talented team in the NFL. Sure, when it comes to the offensive side, I won't really give you an argument against that because they're very talented on that side of the ball. But defensively, Myles Garrett's fantastic. I think he's one of the best edge rushers in the league and might be a defensive player of the year candidate. Olivier Verne's a good player. He's not great. I think he's a little bit overrated because he's not a pure pass rusher. He's a very solid all-around edge presence. Linebacker-wise, they're good, but they're nothing fantastic. Schobert and Kirksey are a decent combination. Corner-wise, they have a lot of questions because is Greedy Williams going to right away be an impactful player as a rookie? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Safety position I still think is very weak with a veteran Morgan Burnett, Demarius Randall, who they're one of the worst combinations in the league at the safety position. Sheldon Richardson, I feel, is overrated. Their interior defensive line, I think, is overrated. While I don't think they're one of the better defenses in the NFL, I think they're an opportunistic defense. They're a defense that's going to make plays. They're going to cause turnovers. They're going to get sacks. And I think that is going to complement what their offense brings to the table. So while the Browns might not be a shutdown defense, I think they're the right defense for this team. At number 22, I have the New York Jets defense, a defense that I really, really like. I would call this one of my crushes in terms of a defense because I really like the way that they've created and formed this unit. When you look at their interior defensive line, I think it's one of the best in the NFL with Leonard Williams, Quinnen Williams, who I think is going to be the best player from this last draft class and going to take over the NFL from day one from an interior defensive lineman perspective. Henry Anderson is underrated. Steve McClendon is underrated. And they're going to be very, very good against the run. This defense is going to be awesome against the run. CJ Mosley is one of the best middle linebackers in the league, as is Avery Williamson. So you have probably the best interior linebacker combination in the league. Jamal Adams is the best safety in the game, in my opinion. And Marcus May is really, really undervalued. Where I have an issue with the Jets defense is at two positions that you can't have an issue with, which is the edge rush. The corners are not very good either. So when you don't have great corners and you don't have a great edge rush, that's when I take you back 10 spots. If they had another good corner and a good pass rusher, I think the Jets would be a top 10 defense, no questions asked. But the edge rush is it's going to be that guy. And then from a corner perspective, if Trumaine Johnson doesn't up his play, they're very weak at this spot. Brian Poole was a decent ad, but he's not going to really be a game changer. So the Jets defense, while I really, really like their linebackers, their interior D line, and their safeties, their edge rush and their corners are one of the biggest anchors of any unit in the NFL. At number 21, the Seattle Seahawks defense. Now, while the Seahawks defense might no longer be the Legion of Boom, I think they are a defense that will surprise some people. I think they are a little bit underrated. I think they have games where they really make plays and take it over. But at the same time, it's hard to know going into 2019 what the loss of Frank Clark is going to mean to this defense. Looking at it, it's a very young defense. It's a fast defense, but it's also a defense with many questions. I do really like Jaron Reed, but he's a little bit banged up going into this season. I think LJ Collier was a pretty good pick, but he's not going to be Frank Clark. Ziggy Ansah was not a bad add as a veteran presence, but he's always banged up. Bobby Wagner is still at the peak of his play, and he's the best, maybe, linebacker in the NFL. If he's not the best, he's behind Luke Kuechly. Either way, he's one of the best linebackers in the game. KJ Wright, I think they were lucky to get him back, and I think that was an awesome re-signing from their perspective. Secondary is where they're underrated. I think Trey Flowers is a promising young player. Shaquille Griffin is a pretty good player that gets undervalued. Brad McDougald played very well, and Tedrick Thompson is pretty good. So from a starting four kind of safety combination, corner combination, secondary is good. Linebacking core is good. Defensive line, I wish they had Frank Clark, because if they did, they'd probably be in the top 15. But I just don't know from an edge rushing perspective or a defensive line perspective against the run what they're going to offer. I think that's a major weakness. I don't really know what to expect from this defensive line. And also, losing slot corner Justin Coleman was one of the most underrated losses of this offseason that I think will impact this secondary as well. I like a lot of their young players. I think they're developing into a good defense. I just don't think they're there yet. At number 20, a defense that was like two different units in the postseason and in the regular season of 2018. That's the LA Rams. The LA Rams defense, they were so good in the postseason, including the Super Bowl, where they were incredible against the Patriots and Tom Brady. But in the regular season, I think they ranked in the 20s in both points given up and yards allowed. So that being said, the Rams are a very inconsistent defense, and they're inconsistent because they lack a lot of depth. So when there's any sort of injuries that hurt this team or hurt this defense, it's really hard to know what we're going to get out of this unit. At the same time, they have a lot of studs on their defense, which cause them to play very well in some games. Aaron Donald is incredible. Hall of Famer already at this point in his career, and he's just getting started. You look at Michael Brockers, who's a good player as well, to form a tandem with Aaron Donald on that defensive line. But behind them, who do you really have? And if Aaron Donald or Michael Brockers goes down, what impact is this going to have on this defense? I think Corey Littleton is very underrated as an inside backer. The pass rushing from the edge perspective, I think Fowler has his moments, but he's also a very inconsistent player. It's going to be interesting to see what we get from Clay Matthews. Is he going to be any better than he was the last few years in Green Bay, because he wasn't very good there, and I don't really love that signing. This defense is really, really old. Like, the secondary from Eric Weddle to Aqib Talib and then Clay Matthews, this defense is old, and they're relying on a lot of old guys to get things done. While they can be elite in certain areas, like if Aqib Talib can play lights out, he's awesome. John Johnson doesn't get enough credit for how good he is. Eric Weddle is still very intelligent and can put you in the right places. Nickel Roby-Coleman, still one of the best slot corners in the game. Aaron Donald, we know about him. This is a really tough defense to rank, because any given week, they could be the best defense in the NFL or the worst defense in the NFL. At number 19, the New Orleans Saints, a defense that was extremely good against the run in 2018. I believe they ranked first against the run in 2018. Going into 2019, my question is, can they maintain their level of play? Because I think the Saints are a unit that in 2018, even a little bit in 2017, sort of have played above their head. Cameron Jordan is an absolute stud on the defensive line. I think Sheldon Rankins is very good as well. Malcolm Brown was not a bad signing, but I was never a huge fan of him when he was on the Patriots. And I think the loss of Okafor is going to be interesting to see how they replace him. Is Marcus Davenport going to be a 3-down player? How does he develop in his second season? I think a lot lies on him in terms of pressure. Linebacking wise, I love Demario Davis, but the depth behind him isn't great. Corner wise, they have Marshawn Lattimore, who's elite, but outside of him, Eli Apple's okay. Like, a lot of their defense is okay. And I think that's why I ranked them at number 19. Nothing really stands out to me outside of Cameron Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, and Demario Davis. They have three very good players. And outside of those three very good players, it's pretty much average throughout the rest of their defensive roster. I think they do a good job schematically. I think they complement their offense very well. But this isn't a defense that's going to dominate. They're just asked to complement their offense and asked to not lose the game for Drew Brees and Sean Payton. At number 18, I have the Carolina Panthers defense, a defense that I do believe actually improved over the course of this offseason. The Panthers' strength of their defense, where they want to be their best, is up front. And that's exactly where Carolina improved their defense this offseason. They added McCoy, a long rival of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to their defensive tackle core that already includes Kawan Short, one of the better pass rushing interior players in the NFL, and Dontari Poe, a big man, a big run stuffer in the middle of their defense. And then you also look at their defensive end depth chart, where they added Bruce Irvin, and they basically replace the old man Julius Peppers, who is now retired, with a young player, Brian Burns, from the NFL draft, a pure pass rusher, pure speed, pure quickness. So you add Bruce Irvin and Brian Burns to Mario Addison, a player that's traditionally been around 10 sacks per season throughout the course of his NFL career, at least over the past 3 to 4 seasons, I would say. The linebacking core is still one of the better ones in the NFL, led by Luke Kuechly. Shaq Thompson, I believe, will improve with their scheme change and is still one of the better athletes at this position in the NFL. And the draft pick of Christian Miller is the one that I'm very, very intrigued by to see how they use him within this defensive scheme. Secondary is where I want to see some improvement from some of their younger players, like Dante Jackson. If Dante Jackson can take a step forward and really provide to be one of the better young corners in the NFL, then this defense could not only be in the top 20, but possibly in the top 10. At number 17, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, a defense that I think went overlooked last season because the Steelers did not make the playoffs. But when it came to defensive football, I think the Steelers actually played their best defense in the past few seasons. When you look at their defensive line, especially from the interior perspective, it's one of the better ones in the NFL with that trio of Tuitt, Hargrave, and of course, Cameron Hayward. Three guys that can pass rush, but can also stop the run very, very well and complement each other's game. The weakness that the Steelers have finally solved is going out in the draft and solving their speed issue in the inside of their defense at their linebacking position. And that was solved by Michigan linebacker Devin Bush Jr., who I believe is going to elevate this defense by making the middle of their defense faster. If the middle of your defense, your linebacker, is slow, that means your entire defense is slow. And that's been a huge problem for the Steelers defense without Ryan Shazier. So Bush should be the best player they've had at that position since the Ryan Shazier injury. TJ Watt is a stud who I think's been overlooked for his play last season. Joe Hayden has been a nice player at corner for them ever since getting him in free agency. Steven Nelson, I think, isn't a bad add in free agency. He's a competitive man-to-man corner, and I think the Steelers have steadily wanted to transition to zone to more man-to-man coverage, and Mike Hilton is one of the more underrated slot corners in the NFL. The Steelers are a defense that I don't think is going to be elite this season, but I think they are pretty darn good. Smack dab in the middle of the NFL when it comes to defense is the San Francisco 49ers here at number 16. The 49ers are probably the most intriguing defense in the NFL going into 2019 because they could rather be one of the best defenses in the NFL or they could be one of the worst. They add already to DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, and Armstead, two edge rushers in Nick Bosa, very high in the draft, that I know he's a little bit banged up right now, but should be a very good edge rusher from day one in the NFL, and I think's a lot like his brother. And they also add Dee Ford, who was the best pure pass rusher in the NFL in 2018. The most forced fumbles in the league and one of the top sackers in the NFL. So if the 49ers offense is top 10, the way that I do believe that they will be, this is a defense that has the capability of playing very good complementary football. The 49ers also addressed two crucial positions in the offseason in Quan Alexander at linebacker to team up with the young player Fred Warner, who had a really good season in his rookie season. Corner-wise, outside of Richard Sherman, nobody has really been anything decent. So that being said, they needed to go out and get somebody who has a little bit of familiarity in cover 3 and a little bit of ability in man-to-man. And Jason Verrett, if he stays healthy, can be that guy. The safety position is a question, and I wonder with improved pass rush if they can improve their play. But overall, the 49ers are a defense that I don't expect to be anything special. But if they can complement the way their offense plays by providing them with some turnovers, by providing them with some big third down stops due to their pass rush, I think the 49ers can be a pretty good defense. At number 15, another defense that has made a lot of improvements that I believe will potentially be one of the better defenses in the NFL. We just haven't seen it yet. It's a lot like the 49ers. The Green Bay Packers have made a lot of improvements defensively. I think this is, I've said it many times, the best defense Aaron Rodgers has had possibly since he won the Super Bowl. In 2019, the Packers should take a massive step forward with this defense, adding Darnell Savage Jr. in the draft along with Rashawn Gary to both of their defensive line and their secondary. Then you add Adrian Amos, who's one of the sneaky, underrated, best safeties in the game. Jari Alexander's a promising young shutdown corner. They add the Smith brothers and Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith to add a edge presence, and both in the run-stopping department and in the pass-rushing department. Mike Daniels and Kenny Clark are already a dominant interior duo. The Packers have some very interesting, awesome things about their defense. They also have some questions. Who is that number 2 corner? Is it Kevin King? Is it Josh Jackson? Their linebacking core is interesting. I think Martinez is a pretty good player, but outside of him, who is going to be that other guy to play beside Martinez? And the depth is a concern. But when you look at the Packers starting unit and you look at the Packers as a team that spent a lot of high capital defensively to help Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the football, I think this is a defense that has a ton of potential. They just got to be able to put it together. That's why I rank them here at number 15. At number 14, the Houston Texans defense is a defense that I've described many years now to be a defense filled with studs, but also with flaws. Studs and flaws. That's the Houston Texans defense. They have J.J. Watt. They have Jadeveon Clowney. They have Zach Cunningham. They have Whitney Merciless. They have Benardrick McKinney. They have studs on their defense. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to their secondary, I really don't feel like they've had really good corner play since A.J. Bouye left. They're very inconsistent in coverage. They give up far too many deep passes, and they can't really be too reliant on their front seven. Then you add in the fact that they have lost a little bit of depth up front with a guy like Chris Covington, who I think was kind of undervalued to this defense. And then they've lost Tyrann Mathieu in the back end from their safety position, Kareem Jackson as well, kind of two hybrid players that were very important to the schematic versatility of what they wanted to run week in and week out. But again, the Texans just have too many studs for me not to rank them in the top half of the NFL defenses going into 2019. At number 13, the Indianapolis Colts defense, a defense I do believe that improved over the course of the 2019 offseason, while the Houston Texans, I think they declined. So that's why the Colts are one spot above the Houston Texans. I think the Colts extremely outdid themselves in 2018. They outperformed expectations more so than any other defense in the NFL. And I think they couple their talent with their scheme better than just about anybody. Their talent coming into 2018 was at the bottom of the NFL. But you add that scheme that complements what their players do so well, and it enhances them to the next level. And that's what I appreciate about what the Colts have done defensively. I think they have a lot of good on their roster, but outside of Darius Leonard, they don't really have any studs. And that makes them a good defense, but I don't think they're a great defense. Now, they're a defense that is so young, so we could see them develop some more studs over the course of 2019. I wouldn't count on it, but I do believe they're a better unit than they were in 2018, thanks to adding Justin Houston, adding him to Jabal Sheard on the other side. I think that's a very underrated edge rushing duo. They already have some pretty good players in the interior. Of course, Darius Leonard at linebacker, along with Anthony Walker, who's pretty good as well. Their corner play, it's hit and miss. I think they fit their scheme very well. Like Kenny Moore, Pierre Desir, who came out of absolutely nowhere, was a backup for the Seahawks, found a starting role for the Colts. The safety play is the position that I'm very intrigued by. Do they take that next step? Especially Hooker, who's expected to be a stud in the NFL, hasn't really turned out to be that yet, but still has the time to do so. I think the Colts defense is worth looking out for in 2019 to see if they take that next step, or if maybe they take a step back because they just outperformed what we expected them to do in 2018. At number 12, I have perhaps the most slept on defensive unit going into 2019, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have the most underrated defensive line in the NFL. I made a video about it. Go check it out. But basically, since Snacks Harrison came into the fold in 2018, the Lions changed the way they play defensively. I believe in 2019, they're going to be one of the best run-stuffing units in the league with a bunch of big guys up front. Trey Flowers is going to provide a pass rush that they haven't had in a long time. And secondary-wise, adding Justin Coleman to Darius Slay is going to be huge for what they do in coverage. The big question for me is, what does Matt Patricia get out of these linebackers at the second level? How does he utilize them as pass rushers? How does he utilize them within his defense? And I think you're going to see an evolution of this defense in 2019. I think the Lions will be a very, very good unit, a unit that always keeps their team in the game. Don't sleep on the Lions defense going into 2019. At number 11, the Minnesota Vikings defense, a defense that was one of the best in the NFL in 2017, if not the best in the NFL. And then in 2018, they kind of took a big step back. Like, they were still a top 10 unit, but not an elite unit. I want to see Xavier Rhodes get back to his form that he was in 2017. Up front, Daniel Hunter is one of the best young pass rushers in the league. Hopefully, Everson Griffin can get back into his form as well. Linebacking wise, I think it was huge that they retain Anthony Barr from a coverage perspective. And all over their defense at every level, they still have studs. They still have some of the best athletes in the league. And again, they still have one of the best defensive coaches. I'm not too worried about the Vikings defense. I just think they need to evolve a little bit. And I think some of their depth players need to elevate their game in 2019 for them to take that step back into elite status. At number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles defense. The Eagles defense, the year that they won the Super Bowl, 2017, was a defense that was one of the better ones in the league. And they still have the same flaws that that unit had. They're not great in the secondary. They have pretty good safeties, like McLeod and Jenkins, great duo. They added Sendeo behind him, which I think was one of the more underrated signings of the offseason. Their defensive line is still the most loaded in the league, especially in the interior. Fletcher Cox is an absolute stud beast animal. Brandon Graham is still a very good player. Chris Long retired, sad to see him go, but Derek Barnett is back from injury. The Eagles are loaded again on the defensive side of the ball, especially on their defensive line. Jim Schwartz is still their defensive coordinator, so no problems there. Zach Brown was an awesome signing at the contract that they got him at. Nigel Bradham is still at linebacker. If they could get a little bit better corner play, this could be a top 5 defense in the NFL, but because that secondary isn't elite, I can't say that they're a top 5 unit, but their pass rush, their defensive line is going to cause a lot of offenses issues, and that's why they're in the top 10. At number 9, the Baltimore Ravens defense. In my opinion, in 2018, the Baltimore Ravens had the best defense in football, but they took a huge step back over the course of this offseason. And you guys know why. They lost the leader of their defense, CJ Mosley. They lost Zadarius Smith. They lost Terrell Suggs. That's going to hurt any defense. I don't care who you are. And not only that, but they lost a significant edge presence. Who is going to be their pass rushers this season? Who's going to be that leader at middle linebacker this season? Those are big, massive holes in their front seven. Now, they still have one of the best secondaries in football, and they still have one of the better schemes in football, which makes me believe they can still be a top 10 unit. Along with signing Earl Thomas, who I still believe is an elite player at the safety position. Their corner play is fantastic. Marlon Humphrey's extremely underrated. Their defensive line is still one of the better run-stuffing units in the league. If they can find a way to creatively get a pass rush, I could see the Ravens still being a top 5 unit. But because that's kind of unknown at the moment, I have to press pause and say the Ravens aren't going to be as good as 2018, but still going to give offenses fits, no doubt. At number 8, the LA Chargers defense, a defense that has 2 absolute studs on the edge. They have 2 studs at corner, and they have Derwin James at safety. From a roster perspective, from a talent perspective, one of the top 5 in the NFL. I ranked them here at number 8 because I think they have one of the weaker schemes for one of the elite defenses in the league. This is a very simplistic scheme that, as we saw in the playoffs, when a team knows how to crack the code of this scheme, it's embarrassing. It does not look good. They improved their interior defensive line, which was a huge weakness of theirs, through the draft. And their linebacking core has a little bit more depth with the added bonus of Thomas Davis and the injuries coming back. Derwin James should only get better. I liked Adderley, the pick in the draft. Desmond King's one of the best slot corners in the league, and Casey Hayward's still Casey Hayward. So the Chargers have a ton of talent. I'd like to see them do a little bit of different things in terms of scheme, maybe play a little bit more man here and there, maybe mix it up a little bit more. But the Chargers still have the talent to be a top 10 defense in the NFL and possibly only improve this unit. At number 7, the New England Patriots defense, a defense that really showed its true form in the playoffs. In the divisional round, they dominate the Chargers offense, and I don't care what the score said, they dominated the Chargers offense and left Phillip Rivers scratching his head. In the AFC Championship, they dominated Mahomes in the first half, and then of course the Chiefs were going to make their plays and their comeback in the second half because it's Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. And then in the Super Bowl, they have one of the most historic performances we've ever seen. They have the best secondary in the league, in my opinion. A great safety trio in McCourty, Chung, and Harmon. Gilmore, Jones, J.C. Jackson, McCourty. 2 second-round picks that are added to this group this season at corner. They add Jamie Collins to Kyle Van Noy and Dante Hightower to get after quarterbacks and cause havoc. As linebackers, they have Michael Bennett to replace Trey Flowers. They added Chase Winovich from the draft. This is a defense that can do so many different things. They're so hybrid. They're so schematically different and confusing and interesting. That's why they're always awesome to watch, especially in big football games. And Belichick has a defense that I believe is going to be his best one since 2014. At number 6, the Tennessee Titans. And just like Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel does very interesting things alongside Dean Pease with this defense that makes it one of the best in the NFL. I think the Titans were probably the most underrated defense from 2018. And the Titans defense can do a lot of different hybrid things thanks to their personnel. They have really good players up front like Casey. They have really good linebackers like Woodyard and Brown. And now they add Cameron Wake to the edge with Harold Landry. Rashawn Evans is there as well, developing into his second season. Byard is one of the best safeties in the game. I like their trio at corner with Butler, who played really good at the end of the season. Logan Ryan was solid as always. They have the versatility in their secondary to cause havoc as a pass rush, but they also have some studs up front to make it really tough and hard on you without having to do anything creative up front. A little bit more so than the Patriots. They're very similar to the Patriots, but I think they have a little bit better talent up front. At number 5, the Buffalo Bills defense led by Sean McDermott and his defensive scheme. And what I love about the Bills defense is they don't do a heck of a ton in terms of creating a lot of pass rush or a lot of confusion for an offense. They just let their defensive line get after the quarterback. They say, hey, Jerry Hughes, pin your ears back, get after the quarterback. Ed Oliver is going to be used awesome in this defensive scheme. They have a great D-line overall, and their linebackers play so free behind it. They're so fast. They go sideline to sideline, cover better than just about any unit. I think you're going to see Edmonds take a huge step forward in his second season. Milano's extremely underrated. Their safeties are so great in coverage. Poyer and Hyde make plays like nobody's business. And their corner position's really, really deep, along with having a really good number 1 in White. McDermott just knows how to utilize his talent within his system better than just about any coach in the NFL, and they just find the right pieces for it, and that's why I have great faith that the Bills will remain one of the better defenses in 2019. At number 4, perhaps the surprise of the top 5, the Denver Broncos defense under now Vic Fangio, and this is why I have such great faith in this pick to be a top 5 unit in 2019. Von Miller and Chubb with Vic Fangio. Oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. You then throw in Bryce Callahan, who we brought over from the Bears, Kareem Jackson from the Texans, Chris Harris at corner. Oh, this is going to be such a fun defense to watch. They have great interior run stuffers like Wolf. I think the Broncos defense is once again going to be one of the best in the NFL. Now, they weren't great last year. And the last 2 seasons, I think they've kind of been playing out of scheme. And I think the coaching, to me personally, has been subpar. With Vic Fangio and these studs, this is going to be a really fun defense that I think is going to be my favorite defense going into 2019, with the complement of great secondary play and great pass rush. At number 3, the Dallas Cowboys defense. The Dallas Cowboys defense, just like the Buffalo Bills, they have a very steady system that gets the best out of their players while not having to do a lot. They just ask their players to play specific roles, and they do it very well. Leighton Vander Esch, very free, great athlete at the second level. He is going to be one of the best linebackers in the league for a long time. Such great instincts in both the run game and the pass game. Jalen Smith gets kind of overshadowed, but he might be better than Vander Esch. That duo is maybe the best in the NFL at the linebacker position. Sean Lee is still there, and he's one of the more intelligent football players in the NFL. DeMarcus Lawrence is a monster off the edge. Robert Quinn's going to be intriguing to see how they utilize him within this defense. They also added Christian Covington from the Houston Texans in the interior. Byron Jones played like an all-pro in the secondary last year. And really their only flaw is their safety play. If they can get a little bit better from their safety play, then this defense could not only be a top 3 unit, but perhaps the best in the NFL. The Cowboys defense is legit. Fast, ferocious, tough, good pass rush, good secondary. I really like what they've done in Dallas. At number 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And in 2017, I had an absolute man crush on the Jacksonville Jaguars defense because they were phenomenal. They were one of the best units I've ever seen in my entire life, and they carried Blake Bortles to an AFC championship game. If they can play like that team, which I think they can, I'm excited in 2019. But the Jaguars defense overall in 2019, I think is maybe lacking a little bit of depth in the safety position and the linebacker position that they had in 2017. Without Telvin Smith, I am questioning who steps up besides Miles Jack. And then safety-wise, they're very young. How's Ronnie Harrison going to perform? How are they going to replace what they had there in the past? But the corners, best corner duo in the league, Ramsey and Bouye. Pass rush wise, forget about it. Yannick Ngakoue and Calais Campbell and Josh Allen and Marcel Darius and Taven Bryan, and the list goes on. This defense is extremely talented. Man for man might be the best in the league. Schematically, I think it could be better. Hopefully they improve it in 2019. It's a little bit simple for me. Maybe if they could add a little bit more creativity, a little bit more confusion along with the playmakers they have, I think this could take this defense even to the next level, which is scary. And at number 1, the Chicago Bears defense. Even if they lost Vic Fangio, I think Chuck Pagano is actually a pretty good defensive coordinator and will do some nice things with their defense. Now, Bryce Callahan, I think, was the biggest loss they had in the offseason. I think Clinton-Dix will do a good job of replacing Adrian Amos. Outside of that, they have a great defense. And I actually think that their linebacking play is going to improve because Roquan Smith, this is his second season, gaining experience, a full training camp, just being a better player overall. Beside Danny Trevathan, you have Khalil Mack, who's a monster, who hopefully can stay healthier this season. Leonard Floyd is still there. You have one of the best interior defensive players in Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman, who's really underrated. I think the Bears defense is still phenomenal. I still think it's great against the run, great against the pass. Fuller proved to be one of the better corners in the league last year. Eddie Jackson proved to be one of the better safeties in the league last year and a huge playmaker who's just pick six machine. So the Bears, even without Vic Fangio, for me, remains the best defense in the NFL going into 2019.